Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Chilling Neigh Podcast, your premier VGC podcast. My name is Rashil, aka Conkledonk, and I'm joined by Sableye VGC, and it's just the two of us today. And moving
Just the
forward, Tommy
two of
is
us.
thriving in life right now, and he's taking a step back from VGC a little bit. But how are you doing, Ryan? How are you doing?
I'm doing okay. I can't complain. Playing a good chunk of Reg G with your EUIC coming up, so it's gonna be a wild ride right now. Interesting. What are your thoughts on Reg G coming back into first place? Like, regardless of the format, how do you feel like we had it, then we went away from it, and then we're back to that format? How does that feel for you?
It's interesting. I feel like with every format, like I love playing Pokemon, like kind of no matter what. I love playing VGC no matter what. Um, but it's usually like there's some formats where it's like I can just kind of play it no matter what team I'm playing.
Yeah.
I'm having a fun time. Even if I'm struggling, I'm still having a fun time. This one feels more like I need to find a team that I have fun with. Otherwise, I'm kind of like, this is hard to play. Because like then you're struggling in this format, especially because it's so you could lose on turn one. You could lose on turn two because
Yep.
Glacial Lance just KO'd everything, or Astrobot just KO'd everything, and you just didn't have the right switch in, and it's kind of over immediately. That's kind of a tough format to play. But at the same time, I am finding some teams. I am like finding some ways to have fun with it, and so still having a good time. But we have a lot to kind of get into, especially first before we dive fully on into Reg G. I want to say off the bat, love and appreciate Tommy for everything he's kind
Yes.
of done for this podcast from the start of it. And he's still, we just hopped off a call with him, and
Yeah.
he's still super supportive of everything we're doing, just kind of thriving in life, away from Mons right now, and um, super supportive of him and super happy for what he's brought to the pod, and it's just gonna be and I going forward, and we're super excited for this new chapter in 2025 after a little bit of a break.
Yep.
And yeah, super excited to just kind of talk about Mons, and yeah, just wanted to make sure we properly thank Tommy for kind of everything he's done for us.
Absolutely.
Um,
Absolutely. But
but yeah, we're coming off of Birmingham and Rio regionals, and we have a lot to talk about there. I know, Ryan, I know you were kind of itching to dive on into this, so I'm gonna let you kick it off.
Okay, so for me, I really want to start. I always think it's weird. I never liked it when they did it in Sword and Shield, and it's what they had, like Series 10 was one thing, and then we had Series 11, which was different, and then Series 12 was what Series 10 was, and I didn't like it back then. And I'm gonna be honest, I still don't like it now. Okay, so yes, Regulation G was our world's format. It was like okay. It wasn't a bad format. It's the game of Pokemon. There's gonna be formats you like, gonna be formats you don't like, and everybody's gonna have different opinions. But I think for me the big issue this time is actually coming back into the Regulation G. I don't remember it feeling this unfun the first time. And I feel like that's just the nature of coming back into a format that was previously ruled off, and especially this case because it was Worlds, right? No one is hiding anything going into the World Championships, right? And what you are going to see is you are going to see everybody put their best teams on the line in that format. You're going to see the best teams coming out of that tournament, and you're going to see a lot of meta development just from that one final tournament. And in the case when it's Worlds, if I'm cooking something I think is really, really good and really, really cool, what am I hiding it for? I'm not hiding it for the Worlds. It is Worlds. I'm going to go bring it and I'm going to play it. So pretty much I feel like all the secrets, now are out on the table, and there's really not a lot of room. Like we saw, spoiler alert, but we saw the same six Pokemon that won Worlds win Birmingham this past weekend. So, and then you saw the Kyogre team that got top 16 at Worlds. There were three of them in top 16 this time. It was like second, fourth, or second, seventh, and top 16 or whatever. But either way, like we're seeing just these high powered teams that have come out of the format that we took a break from, and just we're back and they're dominating again. I liked it when we had the format, and that was it. The format ended. Everybody brought out what was in front of them, what they thought was great for that last tournament of the format, and that was it. We never really went back to analyze it. So it's a little bit weird now coming into a format after kind of all the cards have been put on the table. But I don't know. It's weird. I just want a Veltal. I'm gonna be honest. I just want to see a Veltal somewhere.
Also, it'll be fun, but that would mean Xerneas would come back and oof.
See,
Xerneas in this, I think Xerneas in this format would be easily the biggest demon by far.
I
Like there, I cannot imagine G-Mancy with Terra Boot. Like,
okay. Here's
oh,
my
my
thing.
god,
I don't think it would be that bad.
I, I feel like that's a hot take. I
No, no,
gotta
no, no, no. But hear
hear
me out. Hear me out. I know it's a hot take. I know it's a hot take, and I like it would be very good. I am not dismissing that. It would be one of the top mons in the format. But I feel like in single restricted, much like Calyrex Shadow, it is suffering from being a single restricted format. Xerneas is by far, if it came back, it would be one of the top ones, right? Absolutely, no denying that. But I feel like what we'd see is we'd see something like we had in 2019, where, we had just, Roar on Incineroar. So they set up Geomancy, nope, we were getting roared out. Or we'd see something like a red card on a Ditto or an Amoonguss, right? So the metagame would shift. And when you're playing a single restricted, it's very, very difficult when you only have that one restricted and they have techs for that one restricted, right? So similar to Cali Shadow, in this format, I was playing Calyrex Shadow for the last little bit when we got back into Regulation G, and like it is a very strong Pokemon. And I'm sure you guys have seen the whole like when you get paid bi-weekly and the first week is like, wow, this is great, and then the second week is like ice soup. To me, that's what it feels like when you play Cali Shadow in this format. Because like when you're having like a normal match, you're like, yeah, I have the fastest mon in the format. Astral Barrage is broken, and then the next match you're playing Terrapagos Quadruple Dark, and you're like, oh, I'm not having fun anymore. That's what it feels like in single restricted to me, and I think that's unfortunately the nature of a single restricted format. When your restricted is gaming and there's not that many crazy counters to you, it's like, yeah, okay, this is fun, we're having a good time. But when your restricted isn't gaming, it's every matchup or every other matchup just starts feeling uphill. And I don't know, it's kind of weird, and that's where I think the two restricteds helps a ton, which I can't wait for, and hopefully we get it shortly. But
yeah. I mean, speaking of Cali Shadow, I feel like we went through a period of time where Reg G was dropped, and we had the first few regionals, and Cali Shadow was kind of nowhere to be seen. And then it came out and won, I think LA was the regional. And it was like Cali Shadow's back, and it was doing well online after a while. And it was like, all right, Cali Shadow's back. And then NAIC Worlds, not so great. There was some like, and like Wolf went like 10-0 in sets to start
yeah,
and like did really well with it. And there was some Cali Shadow placements for sure, but wasn't like seeing the usage that like early people thought. And then now Birmingham happens. It's not in the top eight. It's where's even the first Cali Shadow?
12th.
The 12th. Okay, so
12th.
we have one in top 16 and two
That's
in top 32. Two. Wow,
Mon's a fraud,
that's pretty. Rio also okay. Rio had one in top eight.
and that's it. Oh
Um,
no, and a ninth,
yeah,
and Rio had a little bit more at the top tables.
Rio did a little bit better. Rio did a little bit better. Um, Still like it for a mon that is so like again should be like it's the strongest, it's
Yeah,
the fastest. Like it should be kind of you'd think it'd be better, but I think it's probably a bit of like everyone recognizes that it's the strongest, fastest, so you have to have your counters to it because you can just immediately lose to it like so quickly versus the other restricteds have at least some flaw where it's like okay, Specs Maridon only really target it like unless it's locking into Gleam, which it can, but usually only targeting one mon at a time, or Gleam's not that strong of a move. Still from Maridon it hits super hard, but like it's
yeah,
not Astral Barrage.
yeah. I get you.
And then Ice is slow. Zamazenta is only like again
Single
not
target.
hitting
Yeah,
it
yeah.
crazy. As I mean, we saw in finals, Kyogre is prone to missing its origin pulses, especially when you need it to.
Yup.
So it's a bit of like, all right, I will make all my matchups neutral, that's fine, but I am not going to lose to Kali Shadow because
Right.
that is the mon that could just sweep me off the board immediately. And I think people recognizing that and like still not letting it be a thing of like, okay, it wasn't that great in this last regional, I can disrespect it. I think everyone's kind of giving it its proper respect continually, and that's preventing it from dominating the way I think a lot of people thought it would.
Oh, absolutely. I agree. And it's like I said 2 seconds ago, to the Xerneas point, right? It is a very broken mon. It is probably one of the better mons in the format, one of the better restricteds. But because of that, people have answers to it, right? And you have to respect it, right? Miraidon gets around that just because if you resist Miraidon, you're still doing 99% damage. You're still taking 99%. Like we all saw Electro drift into a Moongus, right? It's just not okay kinds of damage, right? Whereas like Calyrex Shadow right now, it doesn't have that, that immediate punch that I think that Miraidon has, and that's why Miraidon kind of surpasses it a little. But if you're just looking at really, really quickly before we get into the Birmingham, really, really quickly as to what's doing well right now. First team, Farragraph, normal type. Right? Got a normal type and really good speed control. That's on the Miraidon team. Next team is you have Roaring Moon and Instant. So now you've got 2 dark types. The following team after that, you have a normal type and Terapagos as the restricted and an Incineroar. The team after that, you have Shen Pao and Chiyu, double dark type once again. After that, you once again same. Yeah, and Wide Guard Zamazenta. I didn't even get into that, right? And then you go one more down, it's double dark again because it's the Ogre team, right? Then you've got flipping Grimmsnarl, which I can only assume was screens here as well, right? So it's like you've got all these pieces.
Terra normal Kali Ice.
Yeah, right. You've got all these pieces, and all of this, a lot of them are 4, and they help in that Calyrex Shadow matchup. So it's just not a fun time to be Calyrex Shadow right now. And that was my issue with Kyogre as well. When Regulation G first came out the first time, it was like, I have a Kyogre, and yeah, I can tear grass and patch the Rillaboom and patch the Raging Bolt, right? But one of the big issues with that is I'm committing my Terra almost every match to Kyogre, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. But when I'm committing it because my opponent has a Rillaboom or my opponent has a Raging Bolt, those are Pokemon that are just going to be very common in the meta and kind of be on teams, right? And we're seeing that now with Calyrex Shadow is, yeah, there's dedicated Calyrex Shadow answers, but they're also not unnecessary on teams. I'm not bringing this Pokemon because it only helps in the Cali Shadow matchup. This Pokemon is a really good Pokemon and it helps in the Calyrex Shadow matchup. Like Roaring Moon, fast, speed control, can be bulky if you want, can hit hard if you want. And we all know about Incineroar. I don't need to go on a rant about Incineroar, right? Like, these are just good Pokemon. They're not restricted Pokemon, so pretty much any team can realistically have these pieces that can just aid versus this high-level Pokemon, and that's I think what we're seeing with the Cali Shadow right now. It's just not there for it.
Yeah. I agree. I want to pivot a little bit because I think it's really funny that our last episode before our break was about weather wars, and now we come back into Reg G and and this wasn't even a thing before, but now Birmingham, we have in top 8, we have 2 Kyogres and 2 Groudons.
Yep.
So weather is fully back. Really, and top 9 there was, ninth place was another Kyogre. So
Yep.
we really have a lot of weather war going on, but really the surprising one is not Kyogre because we've seen it do well, but the Groudon. Kind of, one of these teams kind of reminiscent of like the teams people running in Reg H and before with the Jumpluff stuff, and then there's the Gouging Fire version that got 8th place. So curious on your thoughts on Groudon. Is it here to stay? Was this kind of a Miraidon meta call that is gonna work again, or is it just kind of a one and done deal?
Groudon is 100% staying around. It's not going anywhere. That's a given. I'm not sure if it'll ever surpass like a top 8 or a top 4. It might not win, but it's gonna be around and it's gonna be one of the better meta calls into a tournament more often than not. In fact, there was an image somewhere I saw shortly after Worlds, and it was basically the stat breakdown of how every restricted did versus other restricteds. And the best matchup spread at Worlds was, of course, Calyrex Ice Rider. It did the best into every other restricted, but the second best was Groudon. it surprisingly has one of the best matchup spreads you could ask for as a restricted Pokemon. The main issue being, and we've all been there before with Groudon Kyogre, it's that Precipice Blades, right? So what we're seeing now is we're seeing ways to get around Precipice Blades. And Sun is just very good right now. Right now we've got pieces like, Fluttermane, Chi-Yu, Ogerpon Fire, all these pieces that just Raging Bolt, right? You see these pieces just benefit from having Sun up, right? So now not only do you have this Groudon, this big bulky Pokemon that can now just wall out Miraidon if it locks into an electric move is fantastic. You now hit Miraidon back. You get Weather Wars that you can now potentially win versus some of the opposing Kyogre teams, right? You do pretty well into just some of the more slower restricteds. Like the Zamazenta stuff is pretty neutral, I found, at least when I was running Groudon and testing it. But overall, it's here to stay. It's an interesting spot. Your one real troublesome matchup is that Glacial Lance, is that Cali Ice Rider. Shout out to the Chilling Neigh. But overall, like, that's patchable, right? Like, it's a Pokemon that is very good and I think should have seen usage earlier that just didn't. Like, once again, I think people were scared of Precipice Blades, especially in a meta where, like you said, you have Miraidon with big Dazzling Gleam if you want for spread. You have consistent by both the horses with that spread damage, right? So why risk the Precipice Blades? But what we're seeing now is people are okay risking the Precipice Blades if they're building their team to say, you know what? Either the reward for clicking it is higher, or we're gonna have the the fail safe, in case we do miss a P-Blades, we're going to be able to plan around it because our team is going to be built that well into the rest of the metagame right now. And I think that's what you're seeing here, and I don't think that's going anywhere.
Yeah, I think it's like the story is all about its partners. I mean, like, and I mean, it just having an insanely good matchup into Miraidon. But I think what's really funny is, so like the Groudons that made top 8, one was AV
Mm-hmm.
that you have like high horsepower, I mean, which is still not 100% accurate, but a lot more accurate,
Yep.
95%. So you have a way, and then you have Thunder Punch, Heat Crash. So you have some a lot more accurate moves that you can run instead of or click instead of Precipice Blades. And then the other one was Clear Amulet with Stomping Tantrum. So you get 100%
Mm-hmm.
accurate ground move. Meanwhile, the Kyogres that have Kyogre gets Water Spout, but all the Kyogres chose to just run Origin Pulse. And so everyone's like, you know what? We don't want to risk it with Groudon, but Kyogre, we gamble. And I love that. But I like the other thing I want to say about the ground teams is like the partner, like Raging Bolt specifically, can feel like restricted at times,
It
and
is a
like
restrict.
in
It
Sun,
might as well be.
one of the it really might as well be, and one of them is Life Orb with the Sun Proto boost is insane damage, and the other one you get to run AV, like the other one's AV, so you get the boost of the AV plus the Sun damage. Like you're basically AV and Life Orb. Like it's
Yeah.
ridiculous. I when I've been playing these teams and like I helped one of my friends test against this team when they were using Miraidon, I was like, Raging Bolt, man, this thing is impossible to get rid of because it's so freaking strong, and it's like with AV you get all the bulk. So yeah, I think it's gonna be here to stay. I also don't expect it to win a tournament. I would be a little surprised, um, just because like you're going to want to click or Precipice Blades at times, and that will miss. And there are like looking at I was playing the I was helping a friend and I was playing the team that got I think it was eighth. Yeah, the team that got eighth with the gouging fire stuff. And like on that team alone, you have Icicle Crash, which can miss. You have Draco Meteor, which can miss. You have Heat Wave on Volcarona, which can miss. Will-O-Wisp, Precipice Blades, High Horsepower. There's a lot of like I was telling he was like, this is such a bad match. I was like, sometimes they're just gonna miss and you're gonna
Yeah.
win because they missed, and that's just what's gonna happen. So I would be a little surprised. Be a little surprised. I think it would take a little bit of luck for someone to win a whole major with it, but I do expect it to see usage and do well continually.
I agree. Just one other quick thing on that top 8 team there with the Groudon, the Volcarona, the Champao one. It's one of those ones
Yeah.
where, first of all, I look at this at first glance. I don't know why it's Icicle Crash and not Ice Spinner. I actually think Spinner helps in a lot more matchups than Crash does. Like, yes, you get the power boost from Icicle Crash, and
Yeah.
I'm sure and I'm sure I'm speaking from inexperience here, and I'm sure there's some random damage calc that with Icicle Crash, it's gonna help you, and maybe you don't want to get your sash broken if you ice spinner into like a spiky shield from the Ogre So I definitely understand
Right.
that mentality of it, but I feel like on a Groudon team, you want to find ways to mitigate losing two missing moves. And I
Mhm.
don't know if the upside from Ice Crash is enough to justify not having Ice Spinner when you can also Ice Spinner and remove, the electric terrain from the field. There's a
Yeah.
lot of upside. Remove the grassy terrain from the field in front of that Rillaboom, right? Like I think there might be enough upside to Ice Spinner on that Shenpao on that team. So I don't want to. I just wanted to point out that maybe that's a direction this team kind of heads in, right? Because I think
Yeah.
an evolution of this, and I know the creator of the team, the initial creator, I believe it was the friend of the Chinese player who ended up going 9-0 into Victory Road tournament with the team a while back, or
Mhm.
3 weeks ago. They had come out and said that when at the time the team was taken to the Victory Road tour, they were saying it was only really about 75% complete. Like they weren't really happy with like the final version, and they weren't calling it a final version. But then the team did well, top players started playing it, and now you see a very similar version here in top 8. So I'm curious as to how much more this team can actually evolve going forward, because I think there is a lot of room for it.
Yeah. Totally makes sense. Um, I want to switch to another mon because I think it's interesting and not too surprising, but curious on your thoughts. So, Terapagos.
Oh no.
We have Terapagos in third place. Alex Gomez, who's one of the best players ever, piloting it to third place. But that is the only Terapagos in top 16, and I think the only one in top 32, actually. Yeah, the only one in top 32, and there's only three in top 64.
Yep.
And I mean, I like I saw a tweet that I thought was hilarious, calling Tropicals like a poverty restricted because it basically its base stats are lacking. You have to set up to do any damage. Like I've played Tropicals and I've like very underwhelmed by it. Um, and I'm curious, like it really has not lived up. It was actually crushing online tournaments
Yep.
leading up to Birmingham. It was doing really well in I think it won two Victory Road tournament, one or two.
It won a lot.
It
That's
did
all I
really
know.
well. Yeah. And then just no use. I mean like almost no usage or at least no conversion to doing well in Birmingham. Curious on your thoughts on it moving forward because I don't really see the path for Tropicos to thrive moving
I
forward.
see Terapagos right now as the hard size spam trick room restricted. And hear me out before I catch a bunch of hate, because people are gonna be like, "What is he talking about?" All right, and it's in a sense that hard trick room, like the size spam stuff like that, it is inherently very simple to pilot. Right, your game plans are there; they're in front of you, and you are going to walk in. You're going to click trick room, and you're going to try and sweep with those turns of trick room. You have different plans to try and get trick room going, right? In theory, that's what that team is, and it takes a really talented player to make a team like that less linear and take it to that next level. Similar to Terapagos, I feel like a lot of the times you have those lines, and it's instant Terapagos, fake out, calm mind, parting shot, protect, switch in and fake out. Terra, get rid of their terrain, Terra Starstorm, right? Like all these lines seem very linear when you're going up against it, and especially because it needs to get either that calm mind boost or run that choice specs variant to really get immediate pressure going. There's ways to play around it when you're at high levels. So yeah, it's going to see success. I think it is a very good restricted, don't get me wrong. But in a format where all of a sudden its best matchup is nowhere to be found as well, Cali Shadow being that, it's kind of fallen off now.
Yeah.
Terapagos has one less auto win matchup, for lack of a better term, and it's just gonna take that player that's gonna be able to take it to that next level. And I think that next level is what's separating, something like the Terrapagos teams, that didn't make it and why there's only 3 here, right? At tournaments like this, like just reading through some of these names that have top cut this tournament, right? Like obviously Oliver Eskelin, very, very strong player. Alex Gomez, incredible player. Like I could go down this list and just start listing off incredible players at this tournament. So when it comes down to playing Terrapagos and finishing high in like really competitive tournaments, it takes that, in my opinion, that next level player to make it feel less linear. That player that may not be scared to, I'm going to terrestrialize the Incineroar here on a game and just really shake the matchup on its head, right? Because everybody expects Terrapagos to Terra, right? So you want to have that mindset that's going to be capable of, taking it to that next spot where it's no longer linear, where you can kind of still leave yourself open to a lot of different scenarios. And I feel like that's something that Alex Gomez excelled at in this tournament.
Yeah, that's true. I think it's gonna take a really good player, but I'm just calling it now. I think Tropicos is on fraud watch for the rest of Reg G. I mean, looking at Birmingham, like just looking at the teams here. First place had Iron Hands and Urshifu. Then you have Urshifu on almost every team going down through like the top 20 teams, 18 of them have Urshifu. Like one of the most common mons, like,
and the two that don't have Zamazenta. Just throw that one in there.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, so I mean, if every single team, like, again, just having one of the best and you can't protect obviously in front of Urshifu, you can't tear out of the weakness. I mean, Sub was a really good adaptation from Alex Gomez to be able to, eat a close combat, something like that. But it's just being a Terra Hog, having to set up to actually do some real damage, and like you have to Terra to do like good damage to Kali Shadow too, like to any ghost type, right? Like otherwise you're just clicking a wet noodle move. Like it's just I don't know. I would be surprised if it started like popping off. I don't think it's gonna be doing too great. Yeah, I don't know.
We got to talk about the wild one that got top 7 or got top 8 for 7th place in Sao Paulo, in Rio. Sorry. You got to take a look. You guys got to take a look at this team. If you guys are following along, by the way, the links to both these tournaments and results will be down below. So always feel free to just follow along in case at any point you are curious as to what we're talking about. In case we do a poor job of explaining where our thoughts are going, feel free to follow along that way. But this team is absolutely wild. We've got Talonflame, Ogerpon Water, Grimmsnarl, Terrapagos, Sinistra, and Incineroar. And then the Incineroar has a Choppleberry. The Grimmsnarl is Covert Cloak, not Light Clay. The Talonflame is Overheat instead of a physical flying move like we always see. And it's just an absolutely wild team. And
yeah, no flying move besides Tailwind, like no flying attacking move on Talonflame. The Grimmsnarl has no screens. Like it's Party Shot, Thunderwave, Taunt, all play. I mean, we have a Sinistra, I mean, kind of fairly standard Sinistra, I guess, but like, what is standard Sinistra? There's not a lot. So yeah, this is a pretty cool version of it.
Yeah, I mean, once again, at like when you take it and you just kind of look behind like some of the wild stuff that's here, you look at this and it goes, okay, you got screens Terrapagos with Sinistra healing support, Intimidate support with the Incin, and like an Ogerpon. That's not new. That's not really quite crazy. Like if I just said those details to you, right? Like the base of the team I think is very, very obviously well built. They got 7th at a regional. Clearly something's going on here that's good. But they were able to take these minor adjustments. And I wonder if that's what these Terrapagos players are going to need to do moving forward, where it's not, that cookie cutter matchup I see every time I play Terrapagos, right? Because clearly by the time I figure out what's going on here, I've probably lost game 1. I'm going to be honest with you. Like, unless my Terrapagos matchup is amazing, I'm walking into this and I'm probably struggling a ton in game 1 just to figure out how they're going to approach the matchup versus me. And if you can take that and utilize that to your advantage, especially with something like Terrapagos that is generally known as a little bit more linear, it's interesting, and clearly it worked here. So I'd be curious to see if there's some sort of evolution of more so, quote unquote, out there or more creative Terrapagos teams moving forward. But I really did just want to point that out. Sorry for interrupting, but it needed to be said.
No, I know for sure. I think Terapagos is like really an exercise in how creative and how good at team building are you. Like I think even down to the EV spreads of the Terapagos itself, to like it's really heavily because you cannot Terra. You can't use like or you can Terra, but you can't Terra out of your type. You can't really utilize that defensive Terra, so you have to really partner it with mons that really have a complement, especially because all these Tropicos like the Specs Tropicos has really fallen off. It's mostly just the calm mindsets now. Um, that takes a turn or two to actually get some real setup going, some real damage going. So you need some partners to protect it. But all right, I want to take a break there from the discussing the Birmingham and Rio results, play a little game, and then after that I want to talk about the Maridon team because we need to talk about it, keep winning. But
It's the
I want
best
to
team
play a
in the
little game
format.
to
Spoiler alert.
yeah.
Hate to break it to you guys.
All right, so I'm giving a list of 8 mons. Wait, hold on, 1, 2. Yeah, okay, 8 mons to Ryan, and there is 1 mon that does not belong in this list. You have 3 questions to narrow it down, and then you have to for 1 point, and then you have to guess what the list is of.
Okay. Okay.
So
I'll have the
I'll
list.
read
I'll have these
the list
Pokemon
out.
on the screen so people can follow along if you are watching on YouTube. If not, I'll
Yep.
just recite the list real quick. It is Dondozo, Maridon, Torkoal, Rillaboom, Regieleki, Cali Shadow, Entei, and Zamazenta. Okay, so I'm gonna go. Is the Pokemon that doesn't belong a legendary Pokemon?
It is a legendary Pokemon,
Okay, so I can
so that's
cross
gonna be
off.
big for you.
So Dondozo's gone, Torkoal's gone, Rillaboom is gone. I think Regieleki and Entei classify as sub-legendary, so they're still on that list. Okay, that leaves me with Maridon, Aleki, Cali Shadow, Entei, Zam.
Let us know in the comments if you were able to guess it before
Yeah,
Ryan
yeah,
does.
please do,
Very
cause like this is weird. Like I don't know how I'm supposed to narrow this down. Um, okay, I think I can go. Okay, so it's the Pokemon that doesn't belong a restricted legendary. I can take this down a little farther.
And that is it is a restricted legendary, so
Okay,
you're gonna be down to a 50-50 here.
nope, there's 3
One question
Pokemon here.
left.
There's 3 Pokemon here. You got Maridon,
Oh
Kelly,
yeah,
and
three.
Zam. I got a
Oh yep,
33,
there we go. There
33,
we go.
33. But I still have one more question, right?
You have one more question. One more question.
Maridon, Cali Shadow, and Zam. What do I want to ask? This is the thing. Um, is the Pokemon that doesn't belong weak to Groudon's main stab, so ground type? Is it weak to ground?
It is not weak to ground.
Okay, so the
So
Pokemon that doesn't belong
you
is
asked the
going to
right
be
question there.
Calyrex Shadow. And
Yep,
I have to now
that's the
give
easy part.
you.
What's the list? Why does Cali
Why
Shadow
is it
not?
not Cali Shadow? So you have
Good
the
start though.
option of
Getting
like,
the
oh well, it's the only one. You know, it's got a Pokemon riding another Pokemon, but I don't know if I like that necessarily. You have it's the only
the
Pokemon
rest of
whose ability isn't
the
turned
hint
off by
is
wheezing.
all seven all 7 of the other ones have something in common.
Yeah,
So the Cali Shadow is the only one that doesn't belong, or not because it's unique in its own, I guess
yeah, yeah,
unique, but the other ones all have
yeah,
something
yeah,
in common.
yeah. They all have something in common. I'm gonna go with Calyrex Shadow is the only Pokemon on this list that gets through Weezing's ability.
That is incorrect.
Rats, but.
I mean, technically true.
It's
Technically
technically
true,
true, but
but
it's not the answer you had. Okay, I see you.
technically true. Technically true. Cali Shadow is the only mon on this list that did not get top 8 at the World Championships this past year.
Yeah, good one. Good one. That's a good one.
So we have some fun. I mean, we had a Dondozo team, we had a hard Trick Room
Yep.
team with that Torkoal. I mean, we had a Regieleki team, so a lot of cool mons there. But Play Shadow continues to be the fraud it is. Did not make top 8 at the World Championships.
That is fair. I like
Uh,
that list. That was a good one.
yeah. All right. So now, kind of diving back into the results, because I mean, now we kind of going back to the World Championships. We have Miraidon, who again won Worlds with a 6. We kind of started off the format with Specs Miraidon winning Indianapolis. Then fast forward to Worlds, we have Specs Miraidon and a pretty now set 6 mons that kind of everyone who's playing Miraidon is using for the most part, and wins Worlds. And now we have this whole Reg G break. We have people exploring like maybe Sneasler Miraidon won a Victory Road
Yep.
tournament. Maybe that's going to be, and the player that did it still did super well at this tournament as well, Birmingham. But we now fast forward and we have the same 6 mons winning Birmingham. Is this team like the new like Rinya Sun? Is this the team that's like, okay, this is the standard, like this is the best team in the format and it's going to continue to be the best team in the format?
I don't think it's the new Rinya Sun. I just think what Rinya Sun did in terms of the Dynamax metagame and that dual restricted stuff, like I think that team on its own was just on such another level that I don't. It's gonna be very tough to call something else a Rinya Sun. But by far,
That's
this
true.
Miraidon team is the best team in the format, and I say that because in a single restricted format, it is very very difficult to feel like you have a matchup or a the worst matchup in this case being like close to neutral, maybe slightly negative, is very, very difficult to have in a single restricted format. And I think this team is almost exactly that. When I've tested this team, it just feels like there's always a chance for me, regardless of what counters they try to have, right? They could have a Groudon and a Rillaboom on a team, and if I leverage, my Ogerpon Fire and my Giraffe, well, I'm probably still doing all right into that matchup, right? So despite all those counters in the format, despite everybody, trying to take down this top dog of a Miraidon team, it just still does so much. Like I said before, it just the damage output from Miraidon gets you out of just a lot of bad matchups in general. And then you add that with just really good support behind it. You can't get priorityed because of the Giraffe. Whimsicott's getting your speed control. If it wants Tailwind, it's probably getting Tailwind outside of maybe something like a Weezing shutting it down. It's just such a well-built team that it's tough to really justify saying it's not the best team in the format because there's going to be a matchup for everything. You're always going to have a chance in games, and I think that's something huge when it comes to playing Pokemon. Like, if you're giving yourself a chance in every game, your team is very clearly good, right? You just now have to get the calls right, and it's a very good team. What do you think? Do you think it's comparable to Rinya?
I also agree that like Rinya was the I feel like what Rinya's son put on a different level was because like with the dual restricted, like you can balance everything like a touch better versus here in Reg G where it's single restricted. There's always gonna be like a little bit of matchup roulette. Like there's always gonna be slightly negative matchups and slightly positive matchups because just because of how you're restricted. Like again, Miraidon matching up into a Groudon probably doesn't love that. But I think it's like when we look at the team, like this is very clearly the Miraidon build. Like when we look at
Yeah.
the Birmingham results, and the top 32, there was I think 5 Miraidon teams. One, two, three, four, five, six Miraidon teams, and all of them are the same exact 6 Mons except for one has Chi-Yu instead of Ogerpon Hearthflame, so that's the only difference. And I think we've seen some variations where it's
Yep.
one Mon,
Yep.
one that especially that Fire Mon replaced, um,
Especially if you look at
and
Rio.
then there,
If you look at the Rio
yeah,
results, it's a lot of that 5 Mon core, and then one of them has been switched up. And you can see that in
yep,
third, eighth, ninth, or ninth and 10th. Sorry, I can't read. But there's a lot of them.
yeah,
None of the exact 6 didn't do very well in Rio, but 5 of the 6
yeah,
pretty consistently. Like Rashio was saying, I didn't mean to cut you off, but it's just that's the team.
yeah,
That's the build. That's what you're doing.
yep, yep. And there's only one. The only one that wasn't that build was it Frederick? I want Frederick Hoj Nielsen,
Yep.
who won the Victory Road tournament with the Sneasler Blood Moon Maridon stuff, and he ended up getting top 32 at Birmingham with it. But so I think like this is, I think very clearly like the best Maridon build, and like Specs Maridon does so much damage. Like I think it's so strong, and but I think it's not a team that anyone can pick up and just day two with. I don't think it's like a. I think it's a high ceiling, but
Yeah.
it can also be low floor, especially
Yeah.
because it's done so well now. That if you're a person that's like, all right, you know what, I've been out of it a little bit. Like, let me just pick up a team and roll up to San Antonio with this Maridon 6. Like, you should do okay, but you should also like you should not also be expecting I'm gonna roll through everyone. Like that's
Yeah.
how like this is just such a great team. It's a very good team. Like, but we see a player like Marco Silva who who was on Twitter like maybe a couple days before the tournament saying like I'm just picking up a team. Like I don't have a team, but Cali Shadow feels like it's terrible. Just picked up Maridon and got I think 17th, which is
Yeah.
insane. Like I think it's that kind of team where it's like okay, in the hands of a really good player, like you were saying, you have a shot in every single matchup, and a lot of matchups, like because the team is so aggressive, you're always on the back foot a little bit as the opposing player because you're like, okay, is this Maridon Whimsicott lead gonna just Draco and destroy him on here, and I can't take like, and now I'm playing a 3v4, or is it gonna volt switch and
Yep.
just chunk my mon, and then I switched in my Rillaboom, but now I've actually lost train control because they can just switch it right back, like,
Yep.
and now Iron Hands is basically like AV Life Orb
Yep.
with a electric terrain, and so now they have like a Trick Room mode where now your Ice Rider feels like it's like, oh, okay, I have a great matchup into Rhydon, but actually this low kick or from Iron Hands boosted in terrain and this foul play from boosted defense Farigiraf is just crushing me. Like I'm in a really bad spot here. So it's a really, really good team. I I'm very curious. Like I'm shocked that it won the tournament again after coming off of Worlds. The first regional off of Worlds, I thought people would really kind of veer away from it
Yep.
because thinking, okay, everyone's gonna prep into it. I'm very curious how it does in San Antonio because I think like I was talking about a friend with this, like I think people might even you can't over prep into any team in this format. I think without giving yourself a very much negative matchup into pretty much everything else. I could see people the way that we're seeing. Okay, like every team has one at least maybe two Kali Shadow answers unintentionally because they're just good mons,
Yep.
but because they have that, maybe they start committing more of a okay, this is my Maridon answer. Like this is such a good team that clearly is winning consistently. I need to have a good check into it. Need to have very solid game plans into it, or else I'm just throwing. Like there's and it still might beat you. It's just
Yeah.
that
It's just that
it's
good.
that good of a team. It's just that good of a team. It's not like it's even the most high usage team or anything like that. It's
No.
just in the hands of the right players, it is so strong and it is very hard to. If they make the right calls, you're kind of really stuck. So I think this is definitely not the last that we're seeing of this team, but this is probably not the last that we're seeing of it making a finals. Like I think it could definitely make a finals again, maybe even win another tournament because it's just that good. I think by the end of the format, it will not be doing so as great. No, I think it'll be more sparse in top eight versus okay, now it's like this is the winner like consistently.
I will say it now. I would not be surprised if this exact six win EUIC. And I know that's about a
Yeah.
month away from the day of we're recording, but unless something major happens into development, I would not be surprised if this team is winning EUIC, and I definitely could see it just doing well. Like, here's the thing, right? Like I said before, like right at the beginning of the pod today, I said it's a format that kind of all the cards were on the table. We saw that at Worlds, and now we've seen it with us come back to it. And once again, all the cards are still on the table. Nothing new happened, and we still have this Maridon team dominating. I just don't know how much meta development you're going to need to stop this thing. Because right now, this team, like I said, it's very clearly the best. Yeah, you can like go insane and hard counter it. But let's be honest, how many people and how many players going into a tournament are going to be crazy enough to bring like an aggressive 6 Pokemon counter team to this Miraidon?
Yep.
Maybe 2%
Yep.
of the player base, and that might be high. And let's
Yep.
just say, okay, so maybe you pull one 6-mon counter team to this. You can still afford to lose that game. You don't care. You know, you can only play them once
Yep.
unless you play them again in like Top Cut or something, right? But anybody that's doing a 6-mon counter team to this Miraidon, which honestly, off the top of my head, I can't even think of, is probably hindering other matchups. So the chances of them making it
Yep.
farther are a lot less likely. So I just feel like, yeah, there's gonna be some meta development. There's gonna be some new teams that like Miraidon's not gonna like, because we've already seen some of these Groudon things come out and have decent performances, and Miraidon doesn't love that. But at the end of the day, on the clear amulet ones, your Draco Meteor is still one-shotting. If they're AV and they lead like Farigiraf Miraidon, your Draco Meteor with Helping Hand is still one-shotting. You know? Like, yeah, okay, Groudon's great. It stops you from clicking the electric moves. But once again, it's just the team has so many tools and so many other ways to approach the game that it's not just, haha, Miraidon go burr. It's scary because then,
Yep.
you play game 1 and 2 so standard, and in game 3 it's just like, no, now I'm going to go burr with Miraidon, sorry. you know? Like, there's just so many different ways and so many different ways to approach matchups with this one team. I wouldn't be surprised if it's just something here to stay. Like you said, it might dwindle off, but I would not write it off as a potential winner of later tournaments in the format.
Yeah, but it's Miraidon's building quite the legacy since it's come out in Scarlet and Violet. But I will say, if Ogerpon or not if Ogerpon, if Kyogre doesn't choke in finals and lands
Oh,
that Origin Pulse, we may be having a different conversation here. You
right.
know?
But now this brings up the talk on consistency, right? This is why
Yep.
people were not bringing Kyogre, not bringing Groudon, because you have these consistency issues. No matter what you do with these restricted Pokemon, no matter how consistent you make the cores beside these guys, Kyogre at some point, Groudon at some point, they're going to miss their big move. And it's just inevitable that it's going to happen. It sucks, but it's the nature of that restricted, right? Whereas Miraidon, it doesn't have that drawback. It's not going to miss. Actually, looking at this team, the only move that can miss is Draco Meteor. And that's not even a move
Yeah.
you want to be locking more often than not. That's like your late game move near the end if you necessarily need to. Obviously, we did see Draco Meteor miss in Seniors Worlds. I believe it was top
Yep.
4. Or was it it was finals, right? Was it finals it missed?
I think it was finals.
Either way,
It
we
was
saw it
finals, yeah.
miss, right? So obviously it can still happen. But once again, it's not that move that you're playing towards. More often than not, Miraidon is perfectly fine cycling between Dazzling Gleam and Volt Switch or Electro Drift. One of those 3 moves is going to be clicked more often than not. That Draco doesn't really come out unless it absolutely needs to. These moves don't miss, as opposed to the Kyogre one that at some point you're going to want to click your stab move that hits both targets. I'm going to want to click this thing, and you just are going to miss. It's natural. It's going to happen. It just kind of sucks for that reason, but
Yeah, that's true. Okay, question. All right, two-part question. Right now, who would you say is the GOAT restricted of all time? And then how many more, or what would Miraidon have to do to start to encroach on that level, get on that level?
the GOAT restricted of all time right now, it's between 2 of them. It's either Xerneas or Groudon. I'd have to go back and look at the stats on which one actually has more results in order for me to actually formulate my answer properly. But it's one of those 2, hands down, right? Between the legacies in 2016, with the Primal Dawn, the Primal Kyogre, or moving on into even like 2019, 2022, Groudon was still good. Kyogre sneaks up there, but it definitely doesn't have that legacy that Groudon and Xerneas have. Those 2, by far, in my opinion, are the goated restricteds. I don't think Miraidon's on that level yet. It's doing a very good job of getting close to that. I think what's going to, for me, determine if Miraidon is on that level is going to be what happens when we get to a dual restricted format. Because I wonder right now if Miraidon is only so great because we haven't seen it paired with something else. Now, obviously, you've got Miraidon. When you pair it with something else, it's going to also get better. But there's also a lot of these restricted, like that Groudon that's now creeping into the metagame that still has these flaws versus this Miraidon, where now you pair Groudon with another restricted. All of a sudden, maybe this Miraidon doesn't dominate as much because it just can't deal with Groudon plus a partner restricted, right? So for me, I really want to see how Miraidon fares in double restricted before I start calling it one of the best restricteds of all time. But hands down, if it were to stop today and we had to, say rankings of overall restricted Pokemon, Miraidon's got to be close to that top 5, if not in that top 5 already. The only reason it's not there is just because it hasn't had as much time to get all the results. But it's definitely up there. I just want to see what it does in double restricted because I have a feeling like it's going to be good. Don't get me wrong. It's not going to like fall off and be like, oh, where'd Miraidon go? This guy's a fraud. But it's going to be around, but I just want to see how well it actually performs in those double restricted tours before I can call it that.
Yeah, I agree. So looking back at Worlds results over the years, we have 2 chips for Kyogre, Ray in 2010, and then Wolf in 2016. And then we've had Groudon win twice as well, Ray in 2010, and then Naoto in 2019.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have 1 chip each for Mega Rayquaza, Zacian, Kali Shadow, and Miraidon. If Miraidon wins Worlds this year in what we presume is a double restricted format,
I don't know if it will be.
Shocking. I would be surprised if it's not, but
okay, hear me out on this one.
Okay.
I think Pokemon, as the company, they want the last World Championships on the game to be that double restricted format.
Yeah.
So depending on what their plans are for us having a new game and when we're going to switch over to that new game to compete, I think that's going to impact what we see for Regulation I and whatever the World's format may end up being. And that's scary to me because obviously everybody's looking forward to Legends ZA whenever that may be announced. There's so many theories on that. I'm not going to get into that, right? But assuming that comes out mid to late this year, when are we getting Gen 10? If Generation 10 isn't coming out till, let's just say, end of year 2026, we've got 2 more World Championships. And I know for sure that the Pokemon Company, they like that last tournament, that last Worlds on a game cartridge to be the double restricted one. So I'd be curious to see if that's going to be their timeline, if we're not getting double restricted till the following year at Worlds. Which begs the question as to what's going on this year at Worlds. That's kind of where I am.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you with the timeline. I think you're spot on. I think it's not out of the realm of possibility that they have 2.
Okay.
Like they have the Worlds in double restricted, and then they have it again, and like they have pretty much the entire year, and like maybe they add a few mons from Legends ZA, and they have the same. So I don't know.
That's fair.
If Miraidon wins a second World Championship and has all these has a couple tournament wins and stuff like that, I think you can start talking about it with the big 3 right there with Kyogre and Groudon. I guess Xerneas, but Xerneas does not have a World Championship, so it's lacking that big title.
It's lacking the big title.
It was dominant. It was dominant. I know. It wasn't there for it.
But that's just because no. I'm not saying, hey, you can call it a fraud. It's lacking the World Championship title. I if you want to use that as your argument, I can't fight back. But what I will say is in those formats, Xerneas was the top dog going into those tournaments. And because it was the top dog, people going into the World Championship said, hey, I am not losing to this guy. Okay? Like you have to understand it. Like it's similar to like Kali Shadow right now, right? I don't want to lose to Kali Shadow. No matter what team I'm building, Kali Shadow's nowhere to be seen. But I built a new team yesterday, and I said, okay, what's my Kali Shadow matchup? But you don't even see it in these results. Why would I be doing that? It's just naturally that good, right? That's the thing. So it has to be in that conversation despite not having a world's title.
Sounds like a regular season performer to me. I don't know. Chokes at the biggest stage. That's what it sounds like to me.
Bro crumbles under the pressure. Bro crumbled. It's over.
All right. Well, let's look forward now. We have San Antonio this weekend. So let's dive in on a little bit on predictions here. Curious first, who would you put as the betting favorite for restricted to win? If you had to give some odds. What do you think is the betting favorite to win, and then maybe second and third for restricteds?
I'm gonna go betting favorite. That's actually really tough. I'm gonna go Cali Ice. I think with Maridon coming back, we saw Rio pretty much overrun with the Ice Horse. I think my betting favorite is Cali Ice. I think if any team has the capability to keep up with this Maridon stuff and to just have that overall matchup spread, it will be a Cali Ice team. So my betting odds to win are going to be Cali Ice. I think people are going to be ready for Maridon. I would say my top three, it's going to be Cali Ice winning, Maridon presumably either getting second or losing to that Cali Ice in top four, and I would say Zamazenta is the third.
Okay. I'm gonna go with Zam as the betting favorite. I think like it was a lot of like, especially right before Birmingham, there was a lot of online tournaments and just
Oh
lot
yeah,
of online play where like Amazenta balance felt like insanely good. Like it felt like it was really hard to beat in the hands of a good player, like with any team. Honestly, like it felt
hmm
like it was really strong, and it didn't really show. We didn't talk about too much, but it didn't really show in Birmingham actually. Like it got
fourth.
fourth, but then it didn't really. I mean, one other one in top 16. So I don't know, and like not a lot in top 32 here. I think only one more in top 32.
Yeah, one or two.
Yeah. So I think it maybe betting favorite is
Right.
maybe it's my value bet. I would say my value bet.
That's
I would
you know
say
what
like
I like that more because I was gonna say Zam when you asked me the question. I was gonna be
yeah
like I could
yeah
easily see Zamazenta winning the regional, but I don't
yeah.
think I'm able to make it my favorite to
I
win.
would think you're right. I think Kalia should be the betting favorite, but I think Zom would probably be the bet that I would place. The bet that I think has the most value because I think it's gonna do really well. I think somewhat like it was underrepresented. I think people are gonna pick it up. I think Rhydon, I would probably put it at second in the odds, but I think it's gonna underperform. I think that's a
Right.
bad
I
bet.
I
I think
also
it's
think it's
not
gonna
gonna go.
underperform,
Yeah,
but I don't think you can
yeah.
sit here and say after what
No,
we
you're
see
right.
with the areas we've got, I don't think you can say Maridon
Yeah,
is going anywhere. You
that's
know,
fair. That's fair. That's fair. Okay. Now, over under, I would say 1.5. Cali Shadows in top eight.
in
What
San
do you think?
Antonio.
San Antonio.
Oh, I want to take the under, but I also really want to take. I can take the over. I'll take the over.
All right, I'll take the under on that one. I think it'll do better, and I think we'll see
Right.
like I could see top eight having one, and then top 16 having like four. 4 or 5. Like it could be like a lot, but I think we're gonna just it's still gonna be the mon that like what's going on. Like it's just not. I don't think it's been enough time since Birmingham. I don't think it's been
Yeah,
enough time
I agree.
where I think its pop off is gonna be more at UIC. Like I think it's gonna be like all right, it's been fraud for a while and now boom, it's back after some time. Versus I think it's too quick of a turnaround. I don't see it popping off at San Antonio. I just don't.
That's fair. That's fair.
All right, and then let's end it on maybe like a bold prediction.
Okay.
Um, Maybe prediction on I guess winner, whatever you want to do, whatever bold prediction you have for San Antonio.
You go first. I need a second.
Okay, I'll say my bold prediction is that we. I don't know if this is a bold prediction or not, because we just saw it. I think it's gonna continue. I think we're gonna see Kyogre continue to be one of the best restricteds and have a big showing in top eight. I think it could be the most used or second most used restricted in top eight. And then I will second also say that I think that Groudon kind of falls off. No Groudon in top 16. I think we're gonna see it. I know it's like everyone because I think everyone's gonna kind of hop on it, and it's just gonna be like, all right, that's the logical next step of like Groudon one. Like, let me get on some Groudon. I think there's been some hype around that Chinese team that has been like doing well, and I think Some people will bring it and it's gonna do well. Maybe one in top 16, but I'll be bold and say none.
Okay.
Because I think that there's gonna be people prepping into that now. People be realizing like, okay, Groudon's legit. There's two in top 8. Like, let me make sure I have my Groudon matchups, and the Kyogre teams are gonna kind of wash away the Groudon teams. I'm gonna go Kyogre here. So I think Kyogre most used restricted in top 8, no Groudon in top 16. That's gonna be my bold prediction.
I'm gonna go similar lines just because I'll keep it interesting for us. I'll go no Terrapagos in top 16. I think Terrapagos is gonna have a terrible performance in San Antonio, and I don't think that need necessarily a crazy bold. But I'm gonna go Zamazenta most used restricted, and Zamazenta winning the tournament in top 8. So Zamazenta's gonna win,
I
and
like
there'll
that.
be. I'm gonna make it go even step farther. I'm gonna say Zamazenta's gonna win, and there's gonna be 3 total in top 8, and it will be the
I
most
like
used
that.
restricted
You
in
know
top
what?
8.
I could definitely see a world. I agree with you. I think Zom's gonna win. I think I could see a world where Zom and Kyogre are both kind of. To me, I think Kyogre is gonna be really good, but I think Zom could also just dominate as well. The top 8. So I like that prediction a lot.
We'll see what happens. I'm
Okay.
curious as to where
Yeah.
Fluttermane
We'll
is.
see.
Like, I feel like I play this format and I see Fluttermane constantly, and then I'm looking at these results and it's like, yeah, there's a couple there, but like, that's about it. There's a couple there, you know.
Yeah.
But I feel like it's doing
It'll be
better than what we're seeing results wise. So I'd be curious to see. I got, you know what? Fluttermane's winning along with Zamazenta. Fluttermane's winning with Zamazenta.
I like it. I like it. Okay, well, that's kind of I think it for us. We have San Antonio this weekend, so we're gonna be keeping a close eye on that. Can't wait to watch it, and then Global Challenge the week after. So, some good weekends of Pokemon coming up. But that's it for us for today. Hope you guys are excited as we are to be back watching and listening to the Chilling Neigh. And let us know in the comments if you beat Ryan in the game and any other kind of suggestions and stuff you want to see from us in 2025.
Yeah, please feel free to let us know. Like I said, we're curious. We're happy to be back, and honestly, just looking forward to seeing where we can take this podcast in 2025. It's going to be a good ride.
Yeah. And thank you as always for listening. And I know Tommy's not here, so you gotta do the classic.
All right, love you.